Let's say a woman gets pregnant. Now, I know that trans men and non-binary people can also get pregnant, but I'm going to say woman here just so we don't confuse the Jordan Petersons of the world.
Up yours, woke moralists.
And since we keep being told that forcing people to give birth is definitely not about punishing them for having sex,
if conceiving a child would be disastrous for you, then do not participate in the Reproductive Act.
let's just say that this woman was walking down the street, minding her own business, and someone just tripped and fell and accidentally ejaculated into her vagina. It happens. So no blame. She wasn't wearing a short skirt or too much makeup. No one's at fault. It was an accident. Now, the sperm squirter in this scenario is under no legal obligations unless and until a live baby is born and he is forced by the state to take responsibility. But for now, he's free to go fall down into somebody else's vagina. But this woman, well, she's pregnant. Doesn't want to be, didn't plan to be, and all that. The law in many states now says that she can't get an abortion. She must give birth. Your government says so. There are a bunch of idiots out there who think they have this gotcha question about, is it okay to have an abortion when the baby's already in the birth canal?
How about if a child is halfway out of the birth canal? Is an abortion permissible then?
Which never happens, but for some reason they don't stop asking. And we're going to come back to that. Now, their answer to the problem of, I never wanted a baby and can't support a baby, is always the same. Put it up for adoption. So let's say this hypothetical woman decides that that's what she'll do. She will give birth to a live human and then let someone else care for it, if she must. Fine. So here's my question. When must she give birth? How long does she have to remain pregnant before she can give this life to someone else to care for? See, in the old days, this wasn't a question. A pregnant person would remain pregnant until either the baby came out on its own, or the fetus died, or the pregnant person died, or some combination of those three. And back then, which of those scenarios actually happened was kind of a crapshoot. But now we have, don't know if you've heard of it, a procedure called a cesarean section. And doctors are pretty good at it. We also have this artificial hormone called Pitocin that will allow doctors to induce labor when administered properly. Women have labor induced for lots of reasons. Both of mine were induced because of my history of high blood pressure. My OB in the 90s told me that all 5 of hers were induced so that she could schedule her maternity leave to best care for her patients. So my question to all of you advocates for forced birth out there is, when? When can she have labor induced or have a C-section? And since you folks are all about weird hypotheticals, what if 2 days before her due date she has to defend her dissertation for her astrophysics PhD? Is she allowed to give birth a few days early? Remember, she's going to give the baby up for adoption, just like you want her to, so when is she allowed to do that? Maybe her dissertation defense got moved up a week. Can she have labor induced 9 days before her due date? What if her blood pressure starts to creep up and she's in danger of preeclampsia? What if she's asked to donate a kidney to save someone else's life? When must or may she give birth? I'm no doctor, but a cursory look at Google says that babies can survive outside the uterus as early as about 24 weeks. So is she allowed to give birth at 24 weeks and then give the baby up for adoption? Now, bear with me, so to speak, because I know that this is a pretty outlandish scenario. But if we're going to take these concerns out of the hands of pregnant people and their doctors, we really should examine where the lines are to be drawn. All of the lines. Now, that baby, born at 24 weeks of gestation, would probably have lots of health concerns from being born so prematurely. It would be alive, sure, but it could have some very painful, life-threatening disabilities. Who's going to pay those medical bills? Not the woman who just gave birth. She didn't want this baby in the first place, and besides, she probably can't afford it. Have you seen the cost for hospital care in this country? And she's about to get a PhD in astrophysics, so there's a lot of student debt. But she did what you wanted her to do. She gave birth to a live baby, and then gave that baby up for adoption. Now, I'm aware that forced birthers are going to call me a bunch of ugly names.
Satan-worshipping pedophiles.
This is one of the more disgusting videos I've ever seen.
The Jihad Squad.
You look like a thumb!
For not recognizing that woman would inevitably develop a bond with that fetus while it's growing inside her uterus. She's not a monster. She would learn to love this life that she will nurture with her very flesh even after it's born. But see, that's the point. Of course we all love our children. Many of us love the idea of our children even before they're conceived. That's what forced birth advocates are counting on. They don't have to care about this life that they're causing to be born because they know that our own human nature will create a relationship there where none existed before. The sociologist Orlando Patterson pointed out that at the heart of the condition of slavery was what he called social death. Slaves are not allowed to forge friendships or any other kind of relationship. David Graeber and David Wengrow wrote recently about the words free and friend being derived from the same root word, because the definition of being free means that we're able to form our own friendships. Now, before you begin composing your angry comment, no, I'm not equating motherhood with slavery. I'm just pointing out that while slaves can have relationships, they don't get to choose them. They are completely dependent on their master for any human connection. They are told with whom they can have a relationship. They are told what that relationship will be like, how long it will last, and usually how it will end. Now, our relationships are never random, nor are they completely under our control. Children don't get to choose their parents. Just ask my kids. But it is the case that our freedom is necessarily intertwined with our rights to choose with whom we connect as much as possible. And few relationships are as intimate, as demanding, and as permanent as the one between a parent and child. So having that relationship forced upon someone signifies a fundamental loss of freedom. And isn't it interesting that the same people who want to force us into this parent-child relationship are also telling us with whom we are not allowed to have relationships? That's no accident. So when you hear a person advocating for reproductive health care rights, and they tell you that it's not about being pro-life, it's all about control, this is what they're talking about. There are lots of ways we know that this whole debate has nothing to do with how pro-life you are. I mean, I'm pro-life. I love life. Life was one of my favorite birthday presents. I'm also pro, let's not force more suffering in this world if we can help it. So what I'm not is pro-forced birth. But for those of you out there who still believe that you have the right to control with whom a person has a relationship, to control when, how, and to whom someone gives birth, I urge you to consider the question of when. And just like this whole debate, the answer isn't as easy as you might think.